Taylor, uh, this is your first experience.
Yes.
And as a therapist, getting ready to work with children, trauma,
Yes.
parents, and
Yes.
maybe even adolescents.
Yeah.
One of the tools that you have access to at your clinic is sand therapy. So it's so important, our emphasis here is it's so important for the therapist to have their own experience and to take a number of occasions to really experience it. And so for you and I today, we're going to imagine that this is a sort of a dual purpose,
Okay.
that it's almost clinical supervision, and it's also just in honor of yourself. Then when we're done talking about your scene, whatever questions you'd like to ask, either about the process or about what you've created, we can explore those. But for this process to begin, is there anything that you need from me to build a bridge of trust?
I guess maybe just tell me a little bit about your experience.
Okay,
in doing
sure.
this.
I started in the early 1980s with the original European training in sand play therapy, which is a very Jungian understanding. And then over the decades in my own research, doing cross-cultural study with indigenous peoples and their understanding of the symbols in the sand. And so my doctorate really, it drew upon my love of anthropology and psychology and pushed me to what we would now call social construction, to empower the voice of the cultural other. And our understanding doesn't come then from the suppositions of a theory, such as Jung or Adler or some other, but rather the process, an emphasis on the process, more of narrative therapy approach. And so that's a little bit about what we'll be doing.
Okay.
And so I guess you could say my strong orientation is client-centered from Rogers. Jungian, because that's really an honoring of the unconscious and the activity there.
Yeah.
And then existentialism, how the very core of our existence, the essence of finding meaning in life, purpose, finding freedom, finding identity, and grappling with one's limitations, mortality. Those underline, as I've been able to see, the creation of sand seeds. So sometimes it's grief and loss at a very high level. Sometimes that's not very conscious. So when we're doing this, it is most common for people to weep, to have an emotional experience. Sometimes that's laughter and joy and funny. And sometimes it's an emotionally moving experience of honoring and owning, letting the body, letting the tears be present. So we try to stay as close to being authentic and honest with where we are in the body, in the here and now.
That sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds good.
And what else would you like from me?
Maybe to know, I guess, well, you kind of touched on your experiences with clients like a little bit. Have there been any really like memorable experiences you've had working in sand play?
Yes.
Can you tell a little bit about it? Or what made it stand out to you?
What makes a sand scene memorable is the level of integrity and depth that can happen as a collaborative experience right there. So when the client and the clinician, myself and the other, are able to be really very present, very deeply mindful, where I might on that particular day or in that moment feel permission to really resonate with what is being experienced, and then exploring that very respectfully, honoring the other. So when that dance, when that movement, that's when I feel the profoundness. And every sand scene shouldn't have to go there. It's like human development. We start out and we have all kinds of experience in childhood. And life's a movie, and so we go to have moments when it's just a hoot, and other times when we silently honor the beauty.
That's really it for right now.
Okay. So when you're creating your sand scene, the video will be off.
Okay.
So that this is your bubble, this is your sacred space, and then we will turn the video back on when I'm actually responding to you. And it's a teaching video, so that we want clinicians, pediatricians, psychologists, social workers, everybody to have different glimpse of how we can be more client-centered, how we can be more in-depth, resonate with, respect, and still be curious in that full wonderment and imagination.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. So we'll close the camera down,
Okay.
and you can create your scene, and then we'll answer other afterwards.
Okay. Is there any specific direction I get, or just
No,
whatever?
create the scene the way. Let the figure speak to you.
Okay.
Sometimes people don't use every figure they select. They just needed to select it.
Just to have it.
Exactly. And other times it becomes essential. It can be on the outside or on the inside or on the edge. It's a relationship that you're going to be building with them, that you already have started to build with them. So place and create your scene. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. It is just
Whatever feels good.
what you feel good with, what you intuit.
Okay.
And you can move it. It's not permanent. You know? Yeah.
Okay.
All righty. Very good.
I like it now.
Yes.
Everything feels like it's in its right place.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And you would know the difference. You would know.
Yeah.
What
Before we
needs
moved
to-
everything, it felt different. There was there was definitely stuff going on, and moving it again, I don't want to move them anymore.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And when you trust yourself, and when we do a narrative approach like we just did, then it honors parts of yourself and leaves other parts for their privacy.
Yeah.
So that you are doing the storytelling within you and allowing me to collaborate with you to offer some anchor.
Yeah.
We can move toward questions. If you were actually a client and this weren't a teaching video, then we wouldn't move toward questions. But as a clinician, you're in a dual position here to have the richness of the experience and an authentic meeting of the self.
Yeah.
And then questions that you might have either about your scene or about why we did this, what we did. What questions would you like to ask at this time?
How does the type of sand reflect in or play into this?
The sand options, which aren't always available, like many clinicians will have your basic white. I have sand options because this is a training space where 6 to 10 people come, and the idea is that the sand is organic, that it's the very ground, the earth. So all of the sands are real rock, and not dyed or painted. And then you notice, of course, the sand tray has Mother Earth, the idea of the atmosphere, that we live on the blue planet, with the water underneath and the sides. And then the figures represent or anchor parts of your story, parts of the self that are ready to express themselves today. And many that you selected wanted to be witnessed, but didn't need to come forward. So this is like an entirely separate sand scene.
Yeah, that didn't manifest.
No, but they did in their way of thank you. You selected us, you witnessed us, you acknowledge we exist, and carry on. And then it's like giving permission for you to be very discerning
about this part.
Yeah, so the sand really is tactile. It's what color you like. It doesn't have any huge meaning. It just makes a difference if this was white sand or black sand. It'll make a difference in terms of contrast and color and our eye and our brain and how we experience those colors when we see them. But it's sort of the artist within you and the way the brain plays with color and form and texture. How was that sand though for you? You really while you were even creating, you spent considerable time
Touching.
tactily being in touch, and that was beautiful to be present to, because you really connected with the sand.
Yeah, I felt it. I don't know, out of all the sand options that I had, for whatever reason, when I saw it, I was like, it's probably going to be this one.
Yeah.
But I liked I don't know, it just, something about it's just very, I want to say warm, and I mean warm because of the color, but warm to just something about, I don't know, it just that warmth.
Comforting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. Jurassic sand is where I would get all my sands. So I'm not sure what sand you use in your clinic, but this is from Jurassic sand.
Yeah, it's nice.
So it's comforting, and some people find it very cooling and peaceful, like your waves, and other people find it that radiance of the fire red, the desert heat.
Yeah.
Yes.
I felt like it's a combination of those things.
Okay.
But as far as questions, how do you know, or what gives you the instinct to direct, like what you're saying?
I try to throw out two words, direct and interpret, and go with facilitate, to collaborate, to listen very carefully to what you're saying verbally and non-verbally. And then to invite. Everything is about an invitation. Is there someone here you'd like to speak to? When you mention something, it gives me permission to say, for example, do they know each other? Do they have some? So it's a bead by bead. If the two ravens know each other, then I'm listening for you, and you immediately go right into whether they know each other or not, and then they had communication and how that feels. And so it's parts of you that pop, that part of you that's talking to another part of you. And it was very much around direction and about permission giving, and that's what I felt you were referring to. And then the nurturing, you brought up your grandmother and your mother and the grandmothers in the house and the developmental, and kept that very much in the inner circle, in the inner self. And then your deep respect in honoring the little figure that's in front of the house, that it's so clear that one is the center of, in today, in this moment, was so important. When this is a witnessing figure, and yet we have two, we don't want to refer to it just as one and assume that it is the big one, but is this the inner child of the adult? They both have something that they are feeling and seeing, and they had the information, that they had something to say to you, and you had something to say to them. And it's, but it takes practice. This isn't an instant thing you'll be doing with your clients. Taking a narrative and then working with, constantly following the lead, taking the pulse. How are you feeling? Where else, where do you want to go next? And that changes as you have conversations with them. And really listening to you, like I felt the joy when you were big sister in there saying, I'm gonna take this story and tell you what's going on. It was, your joy just radiates. And the figure, how you describe Batman, is all, for a long time, your whole life, wherever you knew he was important, and then how she was nearby. So I'm looking theoretically at the masculine and the feminine, and how they juxtapose each other. And both of them are heroine, and very tenacious. And they come from totally different worlds. So the combination, just studying the layers for them, the mythology for them.
Yeah. When you work with kids or working with children, is it the way that you kind of facilitate similar?
No,
It's completely different.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good question, because working with clinicians like yourself, or adolescents and adults, the importance of engagement and the honoring of, this is your story. And I gave you permission to either go in and explore it, or to hold on. So either way, we've already started on this is about you, this is about your story, what parts would you like to, what's calling to you, those kind of questions. With children, we don't do anything like that because they already are in the story. They're going to create maybe 2, 3 scenes in your session, right? One right after another. Also, you'll watch them talking and playing. Here comes the airplane and it's going to crash into the bike. So they're acting and changing, pardon me, their scene right in front of you. And so the beauty is, it'd be kind of silly to go in and say, how was this experience for you? Because when I ask that, I'm checking in for your head or your heart. Are you in your soul, heart, or are you being analytical? That question, how was this experience for you, helps me understand where you're anchored. And then I know where to go, bead by bead, or following the path, like a myth, following the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, following the pathway here to see where would you like to go. With children, we don't need to do that.
They're already playing.
With older children, teenagers, and adults, there is a stillness to the scene. There won't be that acting play. So we just need to shut up and let children play, because they know how to heal. They know the stories that they have to work through. And they'll bury things, and they'll pull them up, and they'll create mounds, right? And that's the process. We don't want to invade that. Our silence is so important. If you decide to do Rogerian, do very little. Oh, so the dragon would like to meet the dinosaur. Do very little of that, because when somebody does sand, just like you did, they're in an altered state of consciousness. And so are children. And let them, you wouldn't wake somebody from a dream, deep meditation. No. Let them play. But there will be children who will look to you. Are you even paying attention to me? So we're not doing notes. We're not doing,
right.
field notes or something. But really, when they look at you, you're going to trust yourself. You're going to trust your client. Wow, so the dog is feeling a little left out over there under the pine tree. It's a Rogerian response, following the lead of the client, but not invading their sensing ever.
So they give the invitation.
Well, they'll run into the office and start playing. You won't even need an invitation. Now, sometimes, on occasion, children want you to play with them. Please do. This is, okay, who am I? What would you like me to be? And then every step of the way, it's, okay, I'm sitting over here, I'm not sure where to go. And they'll tell you. So we don't make it any aggressive mood.
Yeah.
But we make, and it's constantly going in acknowledging, I'm feeling a little lost here. I'm not sure what to do. That is the beauty of a good Rogerian, which is you're saying feelings that the puppy dog may be feeling, or the dragon, whatever. Stating those emotions, you're modeling that. Then the client gets a chance to respond to you. I don't care about you. You stay over that pine tree. You've been bad. And so, okay, I'll stay here. But it then allows the story to move forward from the child's point of view. Yeah. Most of the time, they're going to be creating and recreating and pulling apart and all of that.
And it happens just
so spontaneous. If somebody creates a still scene, it's how are you feeling about this? Would you like to explore a part of your scene? So that gives permission, see, through sort of the back door. I don't need to hear about your whole scene, right? What I'm saying is there a part of your scene that you'd like to explore? And it gives everyone permission to go, yeah, I'm really interested in Batman and, finding out what he's seeing here, or maybe the woman in fire. What is she noticing? So being careful not to push the river from my point of view. Holding back when I'm noticing things but not saying anything. And that's my job, is to not say anything, but to stay with you, because it's your life, it's your scene, it's your story. And in this moment, how can I most honor, witness, and respectfully support your exploration? Never for my curiosity. Never. Just because I want to know, well, what about the guitar here? Who does that belong? That's none of my business. And to stay with that position, it's none of my business. So when a child describes their scene and they leave out the turtle in the corner, don't go there.
Just leave it.
Leave it as sort of a rule of thumb. When therapists often ask, well, shouldn't I show that I noticed that they didn't talk about the turtle? Why would you do that? The turtle has got its privacy. I remember one clinician said, well, what if they're trying to trick me and see if I noticed? Then let them find that out. Let them say, but you didn't notice the turtle. Oh, you want to talk about the turtle. So always following the lead and being gentle with that.
And letting them show.
Yes.
And lead the way.
Yeah.
Oh, this was really fun. Not fun, but it was.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be meaningful and fun at the same time. Did you have any other questions before we close?
Are there, when you're working with children or between children and adults, are there common themes that you see between the two that are different, or it's kind of just?
The main difference is the still shots. Children do far more burial and more. Adults place, as you did, figures that call to them, that might create, sometimes if they're in a life crisis, they were just fired or something happened in their life, then the scene may be very purposely created, not because I would direct that, but because that's where they're immediately anchored. And you'll see over the years, as you study this, you'll begin to see how corners are connected, and how, just as a tip, always look for where the eyes are going on those that have eyes. Hello. It's a little hello. So that's a tip as a therapist. Look for where the eyes are on those that have eyes, and notice connections. And where they're looking or where they're headed. The blooming out, the flowers blooming out toward you. The owl casting eyes here. And the centering, as you noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So positioning and just all of what happens is important.
Absolutely, but don't make anything of it. Keep it to yourself, because one of the important role of the therapist is to resonate with what's going on. And if I'm paying attention, one of the tricks that I can do is to shrink myself down and enter the scene silently while you're working to see how I feel. And if there's a fire-breathing dragon, do I feel comforted and protected or somehow violated? Not a conclusion of anything to do with my client, but to help me resonate with energies. So I hear the rumbling of the motor, for this motorbike. I feel the potential in the wind that can come through the butterfly and the plane. And so it's noticing, it's practicing like a martial art or like meditation. Or playing the guitar or the piano. It's a discipline, it's a practice to learn how to look at color, form, vision, depth, and positionality, proximity, not to interpret ever, but to notice.
Just to notice.
And then as you go along, you'll be looking at symbol books in order to build your vocabulary. There's a vocabulary you want to build. You want to understand what a clay pot and an ankh mean. And for somebody, a Jewish Star of David or the crucifix versus a cross. In all of these, you want to understand strings and music and musicality. And so getting familiar with all the blackbirds, ravens, crows, blackbirds, the whole, everybody. Getting to get familiar as well as with the mythology. So you'll be looking up fire, you'll be looking up water, and then it's a vocabulary. It's like learning French.
A new language.
Yes, it is a new language. Any other questions about what happened today?
No, I think this was, I feel complete. This was really great.
It's an honor every time that we witness another human being's expression of part of themselves, parts that are silent and parts that are alive and present, that's an honor. This is the whole sacredness of keeping the integrity, and the bubble always belongs between you and your scene, not between the client and the therapist. My bubble has to be big enough to hold you and keep you safe with your story, with these parts of yourself.
Yeah.
I'm very excited you're starting this journey.
Me too. I'm really excited. I have like leanings toward Carl Jung and a lot of his theories, and so I was excited to come and see because, like you said, the symbols and it all means a lot of different things to different people, and so to see how it shows up in yourself is interesting.
Exactly. It's always your truth.
Yeah.
And then you can study, since you're studying archetypes, then you can start to study the archetypes, the masculine and the feminine, the instinctual with the animals, and then how we transition to mode. Look, you have evolution here: fire, water, then the animal kingdom, and then human experience and mythology, the developmental cycle from you've got human development and child development, it's all over the place. So if you're looking, study your archetypes and build part of your vocabulary that way.
Yeah, I think that was all the questions I had.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was amazing. This is
well,
great.
You're amazing, so you can keep saying it. I'm amazing.
I am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.